This is episode 14 of Objectively Biased. What is going on, everybody? This is Wilder Adams alongside John Tortorelli and River Brown. And today in this episode, we're talking about the NBA trade deadline. Obviously, the Luka trade happened last week, but so much more happened this week. So we're going to talk about some of those notable moves, and we're going to finish off by who is actually untouchable in the NBA. That's kind of a revisited conversation after one of those players who we deemed that way got traded, and we will also revisit the top 10 players to build around under 25 since John and I are getting killed about that right now. So what is going on, boys?
I am super glad my aura lived on to the billing and my Cade fans attacked you guys. To be fair, didn't know the video was months ago. I apologize in advance for that, but glad they attacked you guys. John, you didn't wish me happy Black History Month, man.
It's Happy Black History Month, Riff.
I expected that from you.
Happy
I'm
Black History
not gonna
Month.
lie. I have a lot of friends. I usually don't say it, but it's always Black History. I time this. Let me put this the right way. It's Black History Month, but to me, it's not just the month of February.
There you go, John. That's the best. Yeah, John. That's the best comment ever. But I'm excited to talk about the deadline. A lot of crazy shit that's happened. Honestly, like you mentioned, Wilder, somebody we deemed untouchable got moved for nothing essentially. So this untouchable list is gonna be funny because are they really untouchable when the untouchable guy got moved? I don't know.
I think there's a layer to that conversation that we'll tap into later that sometimes it isn't even about the player, whether they're untouchable or not. So
I'm happy to be here today, James. At the end of the day, this is a great trio we have here to talk about the trade deadline. I'm kind of curious to know what you guys think, where you stand on some of these moves. And last night we even had a little rescind of sorts with the Hornets and the Lakers. That should be an exciting element of this as well.
yeah, absolutely. And before we get to those conversations, let's go right to the San Antonio Spurs because they got De'Aaron Fox. Those rumors turned out to be true. And now you got Fox and Wemby in San Antonio. You got Zach LaVine and first round picks in Sacramento and whatever the heck Chicago got, plus their pick back, which I suppose is a bonus. So, all right, guys, what do you guys think about the De'Aaron Fox trade? Riv, let's start with you.
I always felt like Fox to the Spurs was a match made in heaven. Excuse me. I didn't think he fit in Houston. I felt like Houston wasn't going to be a team that made too many moves at the deadline. I feel like they were going to stay pat, ride with what they have for the season, see what they have. Because it's a different scenario with Houston. And I would use a team like Memphis, for example, which they haven't established three guys that been around for some time in Ja, Bane, and Jaren. So they know what they need, even though they didn't make any moves. But we'll talk about that down the road. With Houston, you still don't know what you have in these young players come playoff time. You don't know what how their games look, if they can even get better. You've seen ascensions in the regular season, but nothing too concrete. As for the Spurs, you have your guy. I mean, this is one-on-one talent. This is a legit generational player. You have to build around them pretty quick. And I think with the Spurs, they were sitting at a 12 seed. They weren't far off from the play-in. You can make this move and not really hinder your future, not really hinder your draft picks because you have a plethora of picks. You still manage to keep that Atlanta pick. You still have your pick if all things fall, down. So you'll still have two potential lottery picks, two first round picks for sure. So this move, they didn't really give up much, in my opinion. And I thought it was a steal move because you get a guy like Fox who isn't a number one, I think, on the championship team, but I think he can be a quality number two. I think he could be a guy that can fit next to Victor. Now they're 1-2 with Fox, I
Yeah.
believe. So
Yep.
that's not the best look. I know I've seen some people think they could make a run this year. That was never that for me. I thought next year would be the real run where you have this all season. You have Castle who can improve. You have Sohan who can improve. You still have Devin Vassell. You bring in two lottery picks. You're gonna have a little money to play with in free agency that you can bring in some vets, kind of like what Houston did. Then you make your real legit run next year. I never thought it'd be this year, but you still have an opportunity this year to make the play. And so I like this move for the Spurs. It was a good move. You didn't give up much. As for Sacramento, I just felt like you could have got a little more. I feel like you could have maybe tried to get that Atlanta pick, maybe try to get a Spurs protected pick, maybe top 10 protected or something. But I get it. You were put in a tough situation because Fox axed out. Fox declined the extension. He wanted to win, even though you tried to make a late push with Doug Christie and winning a couple games. Fox was smart enough to understand this is not a team he can win a championship with. And I get that. So Sacramento pivoted in the best way they could. They had no leverage, and they tried to do the
Mhm.
best thing they could. Sacramento is a franchise to where they just want to be competitive. Their goal isn't to win a championship. I know everybody thinks a team's goal is to win a championship. You need a cream of the crop player, you need a really good roster, and you need a cream of the crop head coaching staff. The
Yeah.
Sacramento Kings don't have none of those. So because they don't have none of those, their history has been pretty bad in our lifetime to where I think right now they just want to remain competitive. I think bringing in Zach LaVine could have still done that. Now they're 0-3, I believe, with him at the moment. Maybe 1-2 if they did win yesterday or 2 days ago. I don't remember. But
Mhm.
they lost the first two games with Zach. So right now they're just trying to figure things out. And then they signed DeMar in the offseason. You have Sabonis, who's kind of a weird player to move. Then you have Keegan Murray, who's literally regressed since his rookie year. It's a tough cookie to crack, but Sacramento right now, they were put in a tough position. And unfortunately, Fox put them in a tough position. So they did the best they can with the plate that was presented to them. As for Chicago, listen, I don't know what to say. You got your pick back. Dope. I guess because they're in the play-in, so there's a chance that they might not get it top 10. It might be like 11 or 12 or 13. So now you have a guarantee that it's your pick now. So I guess that's cool. But you don't have Zach LaVine on your roster. So there's a chance you start to lose games. I mean, last night, the Warriors went on like a 35-10 run, and you end up losing that game. That's right there is tanking. That right there is the perfect move to tank. You were up big, then you lose big. Right there, you tanked well. So for the Spurs, I thought this was a great trade for them. For Sacramento, they did the best they could, and for Chicago, you don't know how to rebuild.
When I first saw the trade for Chicago, I was like, all right, I kind of like this. With Zach LaVine's contract, get a first round pick. And then I realized there's a top 10 protection on it. And the Bulls just fell into the eighth overall slot in the draft. So they would likely get that first round pick if they stay in that top 10. So for their side of the trade, I kind of was a little more excited at first. Now I'm like, for the year Zach LaVine was having 24 game, making 44% of his threes, I get the contract's not great, but the Bulls could have gotten a little bit more. I certainly think that because to me, I think Zach's become a little bit underrated the last couple of years. And then on the Spurs side, I think you had a great point where they don't get the Hawks first round pick. So now the Spurs have 10 first round picks in the next 7 drafts, 2 of which this upcoming year in 2025. And like you laid out, you keep your entire young core. Wemby, Stephon Castle's been playing really well off the bench. I think he has to start. I have not agreed with the Spurs lineups. It's part of why they've lost to the Hornets. Last night they lost to the Magic. But then you also retain Vassell, you retain Shohan. But then that's another luxury for the Spurs. You keep your entire young core, you fracture none of it. And at the same time, you get a player in De'Aaron who was inefficient the last 2 games, but once he gets acclimated to playing with Wemby, it could be a match made in heaven because for years, the Kings have had top 10 offenses, but the defense has always held them back. You give it one more year of Stephon Castle and Sohan developing, their defense will be top 10. And I firmly believe with Wemby and Fox in the 2-man game, you got Vassell and Castle and even Harrison Barnes if a starter. They're going to be a top 10 offense and they're going to be a top 10 defense, maybe not by next year, but certainly from 2 years from now. So for their side of the trade, I'm giving them an A. For the Kings, I would give them like a B minus, a B, because LaVine is still a player who can help you stay competitive, help you sell tickets, and make yourself one of the more exciting teams. And lastly, for the Bulls, I'll give him a C.
You guys both capitalized, I think, on a lot of very important points. I want to say with the Spurs side, De'Aaron Fox is the perfect fit. Perfect fit. I saw one play. I get it. They lost against Charlotte. They lost against Orlando. It's going to take time. But I remember this play. De'Aaron Fox, he gets in isolation. He attacks with his left hand, of course. Gets to the rim. He goes for a layup. He misses the layup. But guess what? You have 3 guys who need to attack De'Aaron Fox. So then you have Wemby just trailing right behind to slam. Like, how do you stop that consistently? Also considering Wembanyama is shooting, better from 3 this year than last year, so he could space the floor for De'Aaron Fox. Young players will continue developing. The Spurs team is a bottom 8 offense in the clutch in the league this year, I believe. De'Aaron Fox was clutch player of the year, so he's one of the most clutch players in the league. So you get that type of guy in isolation who could put that weight off of Wembanyama with how young this core is, with that flexibility, right, John? Because you mentioned they have their first round pick this year. they have Atlanta's first round pick. I think the only pick, I could be wrong, but I believe it's only their 2027 pick that was involved in this deal to an extent. So I believe that went to Sacramento.
Correct.
And
Yep.
then the other two picks in the trade are pretty protected. So the Spurs got away with this like in a dream scenario, because we were talking about in the last episode, do they need to give up Castle? Do they need
Yeah.
do they need to give up 3 or 4 first round picks? None of that really happened. So massive win for the Spurs. And I want to spin the Sacramento conversation a little bit, because I want to go back to the Tyrese Haliburton and De'Aaron Fox trade. They picked De'Aaron Fox to be the guy for the next 5, 6, 7 years, the guy who is going to lead a run. The Kings right now are at this weird spot now where, like Riv mentioned, they're trying to compete. They're trying to win as much as possible, but we all know there's a cap to that. That makes the Tyrese Haliburton trade even more regrettable. Domantas Sabonis is still really good, and he's going to be very productive for this team. But now the Kings are in this weird little limbo right now where they're just good enough, but not quite good enough, right? So it's like, okay, is this really what you wanted to trade a 25-year-old all-star at this moment for? I don't know. Tyrese Haliburton isn't a perfect player, and he's not a better player than De'Aaron Fox. But you have that timeline, you have that age, and now Sacramento is going to hopefully look for a player like Tyrese Haliburton they can rebuild around again in the near future. So because they gave up on, or they didn't give up, but because De'Aaron Fox ended up wanting to move on because of the extension talks, I think it makes the trade even more regrettable looking back.
I think even going back to that, why would you pick Halliburton when you already had a guard in Fox? Like it starts, and Joel hit the nail on the head with this. Their drafting has been poor in the past 3 to 4 seasons, where they're not picking outside of Keegan Murray. They're not really picking players that kind of fit the Sabonis and Fox's game. They're not picking players that complement the roster. You went guard like 3 times in a row. Davion
Mhm.
Mitchell, Halliburton, Devin Carter, like you continue, like you're not probably like 3 straight, but you continue to pick
Mhm.
guard, 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 guard. You're not utilizing, or you're not picking players that fit towards this team's strength. And listen, I'll be the first to admit I'm the biggest Hallie hater in the world.
I
Like
know you are.
that never change in my life. But at the same time, you're right. Like he was on a cheaper deal. He was giving you pretty good production. You don't know what the cap is with him, but I think he probably stays. I think you're able to build a little bit more with him. He's a point guard first, so it is a tough situation, but I think Sacramento was put in this situation because of their drafting first. Then you look at that deal, and unfortunately, now you're looking like, damn, we probably picked the wrong guy.
Can I be honest with you guys? I disagree with both of you. On one hand, I thought the Kings taking Haliburton was a great pick because there's no one else left on the board who was better. And at that stage, they were so bad for so long. You need to go best player available, even if it's the same position as Fox. Partly because Haliburton can play off the ball. I'm also going to say this: with the way that Tyrese Haliburton is playing this year, and I understand he did not look 100% earlier on with the hamstring injury.
Oh
Not
God.
that Sabonis is the better player right now. I mean, Haliburton, when I'm watching him in the Laker game, I watch him in a 0-point dud. I don't see the scoring burst. I see a really malleable complementary piece in the top 10 offense who cannot scale high enough to be truly that same level of player we saw to start last year. I'm not certain that was a mistake by the Kings to trade him for Sabonis with the way that Sabonis is playing compared to Haliburton, who's looked perpetually not 100% and
Right.
clearly is lacking a gear as a shot creator.
First of all, we need to stop acting like what he showed us at the beginning of last year was real. It wasn't real. What he has shown us in the past 2 years, which was the back end of last year and this year, this is him. It's not that he's lacking any burst. No, the ball handling is not strong. He's not that fast. Unless you're a big, he can't really get past you. The jumper is really clean. I'm not gonna say he can't shoot, but he lacks a toolbox in the self creation department. That's what it is.
Kind of like a bag
It's
defender.
it's simply what it is. He lacks a toolbox in the self creation. And when you are a guard, a point guard, you need a toolbox. Every guard has a toolbox. Cade has one. Ant-Man has one. Steph has one. Brunson has one. SGA has one.
Kyrie.
Kyrie has the greatest toolbox ever. When you are a guard, you are smaller than most. You're probably being guarded by a bigger player. You need a set of tricks, a toolbox to get to in moments. Tyrese Haliburton you can't give me a definitive move that he can go to in crunch time or to get past a good defender. He is a point guard maestro. I will never take that away from him. His playmaking is really good. I can also say Indiana's system is really good and it caters to his playmaking skills. Now, if he stayed in Sacramento, which I don't remember the board, so I can't say I agree or disagree with you,
Big
John.
12.
So yeah, I can't remember the board. I know it was a weak draft, but I can't remember the board. But I'll say if he stayed in Sacramento, we know from our past, a situation where you have 2 point guards in the backcourt never really works. So in reality, you need a guard and a wing that can complement that guard's skill next to that guard. So I get it. Best player available makes sense. Like it 9 times out of 10, you go with the best player available.
Right.
But at the same time, you already had a point guard, a
No, you're
really
right.
damn good point guard. I get it. Like I said, I don't remember the draft board, so I won't agree or disagree with you. But I feel like there was a point where they picked him knowing eventually they were going to have to trade one of those guys.
Right. The next 5 picks in that 2020 draft class were Kira Lewis Jr., Aaron Nesmith, Cole Anthony, Isaiah Stewart, and Alexei Pokusevsky.
Were those the real, like, who was the guys down the road?
Tyrese Maxey, Desmond Bane, guys like that. Jaden McDaniels.
I wouldn't have hated Desmond Bane, but I get it. He wouldn't have been that high.
No. I will say on the other part that what Haliburton did in November and December was not necessarily truly what he was, but in the playoffs last year, 19 a game, 9 assists, best playoff offense in the conference finals. That was real. And I think that's really what Haliburton is supposed to be, what we can expect. Nearly 20 a game on better efficiency, and he'll ideally give you a little bit more than
He had 0 like 3 times this year.
Yeah, it's pretty impressive. I'm not gonna lie to you. Good for him.
Had a
Good for
weird
him.
year. I disagree with both of you guys. Like I disagree with both of you guys. I get the idea. Domantas Sabonis on the surface, better player than Tyrese Haliburton. I get it. Domantas Sabonis is also like 5 years older. Domantas Sabonis, you're building around Domantas Sabonis. Like, are we serious here?
Mhm.
When you're a young player, there's possibilities. Not only about you as a player, but the opportunity to build a roster around you. Like Riv mentioned, rookie contract at the time, right? But also, let's just say, yes, Tyrese Haliburton isn't those top echelon young guards in the league, maybe. But if that's the case, then he's good enough to suck with.
Right.
He's good enough to be a big piece, but he's not good enough to overcome rebuilding like a guy like Luka Doncic did. So you look at those drafts right after 2020, the top of those drafts are really good. Look at the number 1 overall picks. Cade Cunningham, Paolo Banchero, Victor Wembanyama, years after. Good drafts ahead of him. And if Sacramento just traded De'Aaron Fox at a time where they probably got even more than they did, they are in a better position to build a good basketball team. Now they're just like, they're in bed with mediocrity right now.
Right.
It's like they're not only in bed in mediocrity, they're freaking stapled in the bed. They can't even get out of it.
That's better than being stapled in the top 5 year after you're missing your lottery picks.
Who cares? It's a better chance than just saying, you know what? Hey, Sacramento fans, guess what? You're looking at other Western Conference teams. The Lakers just got Luka. Look at us. Look at the Warriors. We got Steph Curry. We got Jimmy Butler. And we got you, Domantas Sabonis. Like, come on. You know what I mean? Right. That's what we're going all in on? No. You take the chances. Maybe it doesn't work with Haliburton, but that's still a better calculated risk in hindsight than it is with one good year with Sabonis and Fox and then trading Fox for Levine, who I think is really good, and then 3 picks when only one of them is actually real. So,
yeah. Right. I think we're just a bunch of disagreeing fools on here because I disagree. I think all 3 of them you can't build around. Listen, respect to all their games. All 3. I think Hallie is among the Darius Garland modes, and I love Darius Garland to death. But you can't build a championship team around Darius Garland, and that's no slout on him. You know, some guys just don't have it. I think. But the way Cleveland went about it is they drafted Garland as their guard. Then they built around him. They didn't build the team as he's the number 1. No, they brought him in. Then they brought other guys to complement with him. I felt like that's Wilder where you're going with, where you could have brought in Hallie could have traded Fox, and now you're building guys with him, not
Yeah.
around him.
Yeah.
And that would have been a cool deal because I feel like Hallie is a guy that can be your point guard for a championship team, but you need a number one. Like you need a guy that can. I think right now for Indiana, Pascal Siakam is their number one, and
Mhm.
obviously he's not a number one guy on the championship team. It's no slouch to him. It's just life, you know. So I understand that sentiment. At the same time, Sacramento, they've never been the best at making moves. They've never been the best at making the right decisions. So, you know, in hindsight, yeah, unfortunately, but at the time, you had Fox, you had Sabonis, and then it was justified because they were the second seed, I think the very next year or 2 years after that, whatever it was. Then they drafted Keegan Murray. It felt good because they felt like they got Mike Brown. They were the number one offense in basketball. At the time, it felt like a steering point, but then the West got better. They didn't. They kind of kept their same guys. Then they got messed up. And now they're sitting here like, damn, we fumbled that offseason. And it's, we fumbled a couple draft picks. So it's a tough situation for Sacramento all around.
Well
Yeah,
said.
I just think with Sacramento now, it's just what's next. Okay, you got Zach LaVine, you got Domantas Sabonis. What's next? Is this just your core? Are they going to go into the summer seeing how much those guys can go for? 2026 is a really good draft coming up. We just saw Jared Peterson draft 58 on AJ DeBonsta last night. I mean, it's a really good draft in 2026, probably better than 2025. So Sacramento's got tough decisions to make. And I would also say Chicago, even though they did get real assets in this deal, at least we know where they're going. That's a big step for them. That's a really big step for them. We know where they're going. And for the Spurs, I think they just found the Robin to Victor, which is a big deal because how many teams find the Robin for a number one overall pick by year 2? It doesn't happen very often. So
For the Spurs side, it reminds me a lot of, I know the timelines are different because Kobe was in his 30s. It reminds me of when, and I think it was around the same day of the year, the Lakers acquired Paul Gasol for Kobe. And you get yourself 2 championships with Pau as your number 2 and the running mate to a supernova and not just a franchise face, but a superstar. And for Wemby, I think that's all he really might need in a couple of years down the line. And for De'Aaron Fox, that changes his legacy quite a bit, going from middle of the pack in Sacramento to back home in Texas. Now give himself a chance to win multiple championships with a 21-year-old who has, we're going to talk about later, he's got one of the highest ceilings we've ever seen.
The highest. Like if everything comes together, 100% apex, and he becomes most skilled big in the league, and he's 7'4", highest ceiling ever. That's not a hot take, right?
No.
Cool. I think that's a good way to transition to another deal. All right, guys, should we talk about the Jimmy Butler deal now?
Yes, we will.
Okay. So Jimmy Butler gets traded to Golden State. I believe the Heat got like Andrew Wiggins.
2 top 10 protected picks, and the third will be unconveyed straight to Miami. So,
and then Kyle Anderson ended up in like Toronto. Dennis Schroeder
no,
somehow
Kyle
ended
is
up
in
Detroit.
Kyle is in Miami. He got stuck in Miami.
Oh yeah, he got stuck in
That part of the
Miami.
trade got rescinded.
Oh my gosh, there's a lot of rescinded trades in the last few days. But all right,
That's
so what do
physical.
you guys think about this 3-team deal? Then was Utah involved in this too? No, they weren't.
Yes.
Yeah,
They got PJ.
they weren't.
And I think that might have gotten rescinded. I don't know what happened.
I think it was a 4-team trade. I think
was a
the
4-team,
Clippers were
yep.
involved, Utah, Miami, and Golden State.
Mm-hmm.
Yep, Utah just kind of like hides in trays and just grabs second-round picks for no reason. It's
Yeah,
pretty
they
funny.
just jumped in just cause.
I saw this meme the other day, and it's like people carrying a really heavy door to a car, and then there's this guy on the side of it not actually helping, but he's like doing this, and they're saying that's the Utah Jazz in trades. So I thought that was pretty good. But okay, John, what do you think about the Butler trade?
Wow, skipping Riv on his own team, huh? Riv, you
I
wanna
picked
start?
him first, so
I know you got a good point. So we had a good first introduction to Jimmy last night, of course, and a convincing win. And I think that was a good example of what he can kind of bring. I mean, he looked like, to me, even though he missed the last month or so in Miami, kind of being suspended and whatnot, that he is ready to play and he can come in and contribute right away. And after how well Andrew Wiggins played for them this entire season, you can kind of see that even though he's not going to space the floor in the same way, Jimmy is a clear upgrade. He's going to give you a little bit more of that shot creation, a little bit more of that playmaking that is something that the Warriors have sorely needed for years because the entire mantle has been put on Steph's plate. And they've been asking him to do too much when he's on the floor. Now that you add in Jimmy, it kind of relieves the pressure and opens up a lot more for some of those role players who weren't performing as well as you would have really liked. To me, for the Warriors side of the deal, I do believe it was a price to pay, a 2-year, $120 million extension for Jimmy after this year because he's going to decline that player option. But to give up Wiggins, 5 years younger, and this first round pick, I think it's worth it if you're going to give yourself one more chance for Steph to at least have a chance in the race. Give yourself the opportunity to win a playoff series, fight, and kind of stay relevant because this is the greatest player in your franchise's history. And you owe that to him, and you owe it, maybe not to Draymond, but you definitely owe it to Steph. On the Heat side of things, I'm going to be so real. I thought they did a fantastic job getting yourself for a player who's going to walk in 5 months, a player in Wiggins who fits into their culture so well, and a future first round pick because the odds of them getting a better return to me were slim to none. You aren't going to find a team willing to give up a quality young wing, 29 years old, that gives you a lot of the versatility in the two-way play. Not the same exact time. I think it's a good way for them to kind of sequence into this next era. You're not necessarily holding on to the Jimmy baggage and letting this play out the rest of this year. You have your team for the season. You have your future laid out for you. They do need a spark, but I think that spark has partially come with the emergence of Kel'el Ware at that 5 spot. And what do you know? Had a lot of conversations on pick a side between Bam and Domantas Sabonis. I think we know in the panel, I know Riv knows, Domantas Sabonis is worse than Bam. We should all know this by now, but Bam's been thriving with Kel'el Ware. You bring in Wiggins. I just think the energy has really improved, and it's kind of lifted up the spirits of this Miami team. So for the Warriors, I didn't like it as much at first. I'm going to give them a B for this move. For the Heat, I'm going to give them a B+. I really like the return.
Yeah, John, they tried to disrespect Bam the other day. I wish when they disrespect Bam, you're there because I
When they
just
brought
got
OG on. When they brought
yeah,
OG on. I added the show, I know.
yeah. No, there was another show where they made it seem like Anthony Davis was just clearing above Bam on defense, and I was like, that's like never been true. Like
Yeah, he's not an anchor like Bam. Yeah.
they've
Bam's a
always been
better
right
anchor.
next to each other. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's crazy to me. But you know what, John? We're the only Bam guys. We're real. We know our brother.
Yeah. James, who's better, Bam or Sabonis?
Oh, Bam. Even though I'll say this, Bam, the offense has been rough this year. But
Yeah.
Yeah.
I do think, kind of like Haliburton, I think it's more of a down year than it is. He's going to be like this going forward. And continue your thought, but I have a very funny Haliburton or Bam story I want to tell you guys after
Let's
your
hear it.
points.
Awesome.
Oh, all right. So, like, I'm glad I had the benefit of watching last night and us being talk about it today because it kind of at first I didn't know how Steph, Jimmy, Draymond, and we got this guy named Quentin Post starting at the 5.
Oh, second round wonder.
Yeah, I didn't know how that would look, especially Steph, Draymond, and Jimmy, because what Andrew Wiggins gave you was some semblance of floor space. He can hit the 3 ball at a high clip. He gives you that attack at the rim, but he's not as good of a finisher as Jimmy Butler. But Jimmy Butler has been out for some time, in and out the lineup. Even when he's in the lineup with Miami, you can clearly see he really didn't give a fuck. He was just out there jogging, passing the ball around. He wasn't Jimmy Butler. So I'm glad last night happened because you got to see what he provides. A guy that can get to the line, which something Golden State desperately needed. Another help side defender, which Jimmy Butler is still really fucking good at, being that help side defender. Another strong rebounder, which Jimmy Butler is good at. And Andrew Wiggins gave you, especially in those small ball lineups. Andrew Wiggins was a really good rebounder for you. Jimmy Butler can now kind of be that. A guy who can get downhill, get to the rim, and of course another secondary playmaker, which is something you vastly need. Jimmy had a great debut, and it felt like he was being passive at the same time. It's beautiful too because as soon as we get a second star, Steph has like his best game in a month, and it just gave me butterflies again to know that good things will happen for my brother. I think he'll jump out of this slump now that he has another guy to help him out. But for Miami, I like what they got out of him. I like that the fact that you knew Jimmy was gonna walk. He made it very apparent he didn't want to go to this place. He didn't want to go to that place. I was surprised he didn't want to go to Memphis. It was weird because you felt
Yeah.
like that kind of fits his personality, and they're like a top 3 seed in the West. But he made it
Right.
very clear where he wanted to go. I feel like the Phoenix deal wouldn't have gave them what they needed in the sense of you would have got Bradley Beal back and essentially no picks. With this, you get 2 protected. You get their 2027 pick automatically, and then you get Andrew Wiggins. So it's basically potentially 3 picks because if it's top 10 protected, if Golden State makes the playoffs, Miami gets that. You know, if Golden State makes the playoffs again next year, Miami gets that. You know how Miami is with late first round picks and undrafted guys. They can
They
make
hit
them
him.
into dudes. So like
They
you
hit a
trust
crowd.
Miami's development. I give Miami an A. I think they got out of this really good. You know, Andrew Wiggins is somebody that can really help them. They lost to the Nets the other day, but I won't hold that against them because the Nets do kind of beat some teams out of random nowhere. But Miami got a good deal out of this, and I think now you've pivoted to the retool process. You may not have a star, but in the East, you'll remain competitive because of the fact that you have the best coach in basketball. And on top of that, you have a really good core of just really good players. For Golden State, like you mentioned, John, there was a price to pay. You had to send somebody. Like you were calling for everybody. You could have got Zach LaVine for essentially nothing in the offseason. You botched on that deal. You could have got Laurie. You botched on that deal. So now you pivoted to Kevin Durant, and Kevin Durant said no, which
Yeah.
is insane to me how he could just go up there and say no. But it's Kevin Durant. I respect the hell out of that. He has aura. So then you were just like Jimmy Butler. And at first, the reports came out that Jimmy Butler was saying no, he wasn't going to re-sign in Golden State. But then he goes there and he immediately re-signs a $120 million deal. So the reports gave fishy vibes. I don't know what was going
Right.
on in the reporting. But at the same time, it was a price to pay. And you saw last night, it was a good showing. And granted, it was against a not good team in Chicago, but you needed to put somebody next to Steph, whether it be a low end All Star, a superstar, just somebody next to him, like John
Totally.
mentioned. Yeah, just like John mentioned, to give him an opportunity, like the rest of the guys in the West. Every top old star in the West has a number two. And you needed Steph to have one. It's
Yeah.
about time he had one. I'm glad it's Jimmy Butler, and I'll give him a B for this deal. Like Utah, they got Dennis Schroeder out of the deal, and I think he'll probably be a buyout guy if anything.
Yeah.
And then they got a couple second round picks, like Wilder mentioned. They just jump in deals just to see what they could get,
Yeah.
and they ended up getting a couple seconds. So shout out to them.
Thinking the report real quick. Hypothetically speaking, totally hypothetical scenario. Would you rather have Jimmy Butler, Jonathan Kuminga, multiple first round picks, multiple second round picks, and some swaps, or Kevin Durant? Just an
For
idea.
the Warriors, Kevin Durant. I'm still doing Kevin Durant if I'm the Warriors, for sure.
I would rather have Jimmy in that allegation of picks and Jonathan Kuminga personally.
That's a tough ass question, John. That's a very tough question. Here's the thing. I think even if we get Kevin Durant,
Mhm.
the roster isn't good enough to just say we can go to the championship. I still think
Yep.
it's so many tough teams, especially now that the Lakers have, Luka. You got OKC up there; they're getting healthy. Denver's still around. Dallas still has a really good team. I think Jimmy Butler gives you the perfect blend of, hey, if you make a run, tip your hat off, but you can still be competitive, and we'll still be able, for Golden State, we'll still be able to build our future after Steph because we didn't give up everything. Because if you look at the books, 2027, they're done. That's probably when Steph, Dre, Jimmy call it quits. Their books will be clean. They'll have a
Pod zero.
shitload of money. Yeah, so, but I think I'll do the Jimmy JK. I'll keep that, but that's a tough question, man.
For me, it's not tough because we just saw 5 years ago Steph and KD won multiple championships. Everybody knows in the NBA those two can win together. So even if you give up assets in the summer going into next year, I promise you, people will want to play with Steph Curry, Kevin Durant. And to give Stephen Curry the most validity possible, saying, look, we're still trying to win you another championship. That's Steph Curry's top priority. All right,
Yep.
let's just give you another opportunity to win the title. Butler, you're guaranteed to be good, but nobody's guaranteeing a championship with Butler, as well as his flaky nature. And I'm still wondering, like, over under 20 days before Butler and Draymond get in a fight. They're either going to be best friends or they're going to hate each other. I don't know which one it's going to be. But I do think because Steph Curry, you mentioned it, the GOAT of the franchise, right, John? So giving him a chance to go for another title, F the future at that point. F the future. Jonathan Kuminga is not a championship one anyway. So
See that? Yeah.
you go for Kevin Durant every single time.
It's fair.
And to rewind, you guys want to hear the Bam story?
Yeah.
Please.
Okay, so my mom's assistant, when she was in college, she went to a small school in Minnesota. Her name is Lauren, super sweet person. She went to a school called Bethel. And her and her now husband had a house, and her husband was going out to like parties and stuff, and she was just kind of chilling out that night. And then she just wakes up middle of the night. She hears something. So she walks downstairs into to her kitchen, and then she sees Bam Adebayo cooking eggs in her kitchen. And then she has no idea who this person is, just a super tall guy. This is Bam's second year in the NBA. And she goes like, "Who the hell are you?" And he goes, "Oh, hi, I'm Bam." And he knows her husband or whatever. So then he was just over at the house, and she did not know who he was. And she didn't know who he was until he left. And then she looked up his name. She's like, "Holy crap, that's a Miami Heat player that was just cooking eggs in her kitchen at 2:00 in the morning on a Sunday morning."
That is incredible.
Why was he there?
Yeah.
You know what's funny? I'm not sure, but her husband, I guess, her husband's like a football coach, whatever now. They just knew each other, and he just, I don't know, was part of whatever group while he was with, I guess they were playing the Timberwolves that week, and he was just in whatever group that was. And lo and behold, Bam Adebayo is cooking eggs in her kitchen.
That's so funny. I would have got his autograph, man.
It was so funny because she was like freaking out because this super big tall guy is in her house and she has no idea who he is. So she's like,
2 a.m. you see a 6'10" behemoth in your kitchen just making eggs. You're just like, dude, like, who are you?
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, she was like, okay, enjoy your eggs. And she went back to bed. And then in the morning, she looked up who he was. So it was I thought you guys would like that story. But now, in my opinion, on the Butler trade by itself, similar to what I mentioned about Durant, Jimmy Butler gives Stephen Curry hope in his last window. Regardless of the actual chance of them winning a title, whether it's an actual contender or not, you're telling Stephen Curry, we're making one last swing for you at the tail end of your prime, so you can go for it, even if you probably can't. We had that conversation a couple months ago. Steph a top 10 player or not, I'm not going back into that. But you're telling Steph, which matters the most, we're going to give you a chance to contend. You deserve that. This roster, in my opinion, outside of Steph, still doesn't have enough spacing, and I think that's going to be a problem, and I think dealing Andrew Wiggins hurts that. But I do believe that the Warriors do get slightly better in this deal. I think it's good messaging for the tail end of Steph's career, which I think matters the most. And for Miami, as you guys mentioned, a guy that they could have let walk for nothing this summer.
Yeah.
It was a very toxic situation. Nobody knew if they were getting anything for Butler based on how toxic it became. But coming out with Andrew Wiggins and a pick and Kyle Anderson, who in the right situation is a really good rotation player, especially under a guy like Eric Spoelstra, I think he's going to really put it together there. So I'm really a big fan of the deal for Miami, and I don't think this puts the Warriors over the hump. I don't see another contending window for Stephen Curry personally with this type of team, which is why I would have gone for Kevin Durant, which they did, but just didn't work out. So, yeah, I think for the Heat, I would give this an A-, and I think for the Warriors, I'll give it a B. It's not going to put them over the hump, but I do believe that it's going to keep them competitive, which Steph Curry deserves at this point of his career.
That's the right way to put it, I'd say.
I agree.
Any other points you guys want to add? Should we transition quickly?
No, I think all Steph's asks is, give me a chance. And I think Jimmy Butler gives you a chance to be competitive. You have a long way to go. You're sitting at 10th seed, if I'm not mistaken. So you're not far off, but you got a long way to go. I think this offseason, you walk in, even if you walk in with Steph, with Jimmy, with Dre, so you know your three guys going into next year. So you'll have a better understanding of how to build this roster. But you mentioned it, Wilder. Just remain competitive. That's all. That's all you can ask for in a tough West where there's so many good teams. There's so many, parity in the West. You don't know what's going on. You got Victor over there with Fox at a 12th seed. You got Minnesota. You got the Clippers. Kawhi's back. You got OKC. Now Houston and Memphis are good. Like, there's so much going on in the West. Dallas just got AD. Like, there's just so much going on. You wasn't going to keep him in the race if you just kept, you stayed pat and nothing happened. Because this roster with Jimmy it gives you a better ceiling than with Andrew Wiggins.
This is what I was thinking.
Okay,
real
John,
quick.
yeah.
For the Heat, I think another part of their deadline people don't remember, don't really care about, that's going to be relevant. Them acquiring Davion Mitchell from the Toronto Raptors for PJ Tucker could really be something because Davion's a really good passer, a very good guard defender, and a capable shooter. And I've seen Eric Spoelstra turn the likes of Tyler Johnson, even Kendrick Nunn, who was undrafted, and Gabe Vincent into starters on playoff caliber teams. I'm quite confident he could do the same thing with the player in Davion, who has a decent amount of talent, just been in some really weird kind of jam-packed backcourts. But now with the Heat, I think they'll give him a lot of opportunity. He can develop there.
It's a great point. And speaking of the Heat and Davion Mitchell, what team was Patrick Beverley drafted by?
The
Heat.
The Heat?
Mhm.
Yeah. I'm sure Eric
Back up.
Spoelstra was a catalyst in his development too. And that's a similar archetype to what I think Davion could be if he puts everything together. So if he becomes Patrick Beverley, that's a pretty good get for Miami.
It's a long career.
It's a long career, and you're gonna make all defensive teams.
Pat
And
Bev was on some competitive teams that played pivotal roles in the West, man.
yeah. And trading PJ Tucker for that, who I don't want to like attack PJ Tucker, but I've always felt like he was the purest guy of always being in the right place at the right time. I don't think I've ever seen an NBA role player be valued for being at the right place at the right time more, because I've seen 20,000 PJ Tuckers, but everybody wanted PJ Tucker. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
Listen,
championship pedigree helps.
I'll be disrespectful. PJ Tucker's ass. Like, he's ass cheeks.
Yabusele clears.
Yeah, like he hasn't played, and he got upset because he wasn't playing with the Clippers. But brother, look who's in front of you. You're not gonna play. You don't provide anything. Like, you're 40, dude. Hang it up.
They called him at one point the greatest quarter 3-point shooter ever, and I found that hilarious. Do you remember that?
Yeah, because I was on the show with Joel, and he calls him that.
It's not true. It's just it's what he does. That's different.
It's what he does, not what he's good at. What makes him different than Grant Williams?
I don't think Grant Williams is good. So yeah, I think Grant Williams and PJ Tucker, sure. Like, I don't think Grant. I've never thought Grant Williams was good. So let me not attack Grant Williams. He's injured right now. Let me not attack him.
Yeah.
Thanks for reminding me that 2/3 of Charlotte is injured per usual, man. That hurts me so much. They're always hurt. It kills me.
They should invest in a medical staff.
Speaking of that, I think that's a great way to transition. Speaking of injured Charlotte Hornets, let's talk about that Mark Williams trade.
I would love to go first.
Okay, Riv, you got this. Go at it.
Because this is so funny to me in an unfunny way. It actually is because the trade got rescinded. It's so funny to me because John, my partner John, I consider John one of my business partners, one of my podcast partners, because we're on the show. You know, we run a corporation here. We're trying to build something great, right? So John, here and there, shows up, pulls out for us. You know, he does his thing. Wow, that sounded crazy. Pulls out for us. He does his thing. You know, he arrives. He subs in. He does his thing. John always does his thing. And he pulled up for a Bleacher Report stream with us. You know, he pulled up, and we needed a guy, right? It was me, John, Drew, Joel. We were missing the dumb guy, so we brought in John. We are on there, and the Mark Williams trade came up, right? And I had three grown individuals that are very smart. They know what they're talking about. Tell me that Mark Williams was an A+ deal. And I'm like, okay, I can hear you. I'm going to listen. I'm going to listen. I'm not going to attack. I'm going to listen first because I have a tendency to attack first and not listen. So I listened. And they said, yo, the defense is going to get better. Charlotte, he didn't care. Offensively, he's a demon. And I'm like, okay, I'm listening. Does anybody care about the injury-prone stuff? Oh, it's just a Charlotte thing. I think he'll be fine. And then it's all funny and ironic, Wilder, how he can't go to the Lakers because he failed his physicals. That to me seems like the Lakers dodged a bullet.
Yeah.
And I believe the Lakers dodged a bullet because this is what I've been saying. This man has played maybe 84 games in 3 years.
Yeah.
Maybe. And not to mention he was injured in college. So this is going on 4 to 5 years of nonstop injuries, and it's unfortunate because I do think that has hindered his development. I also think he's a really good player that has potential at 23 years old. But I also think it is bad that Charlotte gives up on you this fast. An organization like Charlotte, who has no young talent, to give up on you this quick, that's a red flag. And then on top of that, you get traded. You fail. I think it was multiple physicals that he failed. It wasn't just one. He failed multiple physicals. In my opinion, the Lakers dodged the bullet because let's say you do bring him in, you don't know if he's going to play for you. You don't know if he's going to be on the roster, or you don't know if he's going to be on the court. You don't know if he's going to be there for important playoff series against the Joker. Important playoff series matched up with Minnesota and Rudy Gobert. Important playoff series where you have to play Zubac. Important playoff series where you maybe have to see Sengun or Jaren Jackson or Chet and Isaiah Hartenstein. You don't
Yeah.
know if he's going to be there. So now you're sitting there like, well, damn. We just gave up our first round pick, and we don't even know if our big man's going to be there. And for the future, how is it going to look? Because he has consistently shown you he can't stay healthy. It's unfortunate. But now they're stuck in this bind. Jackson Hayes is their starting five. And I get it, Drew's a homer. Shout out to my brother. I get it, Lakers fans. You've watched him play. Jackson Hayes is not a 25-minute starting center. He's not a starting center. You cannot go into the playoffs with Jackson Hayes as your starting five. I'm sorry. I get it. The regular season is completely different to the playoffs. The regular season is 82 games of nonstop travel against a different team. You do not have the same time to game plan and scheme up against a team that you will see every other day for the next week or so. It's not the same. It's completely different. Jackson Hayes has showed you what he is throughout his career. He's a backup. He's a solid backup. He's an okay backup. I still think they need two more centers on their roster, but now you're sitting there with the Lakers and you make the Luka deal 50 times out of 50. The Luka deal is magical. It's amazing. You fleece Nico. You didn't even fleece Nico Harrison. Nico Harrison gave him to you and you just like, all right, cool, we'll
Nico
take him.
pissed
Like,
himself.
yeah, like Nico just he tricked himself. He had a demon in his head. I don't know what's going on with him. So now you have Luka. But here's the thing with the Lakers, LeBron and Luka, they haven't been playing defense. LeBron ain't been playing defense all year. You have Finney Smith. You have Vando. You cannot play Vinny Smith and Vando at the same time because Vando does not give you any offensive output. He is a really good energizer, and I get that, but the floor spacing be dreadful. You can put a big on him, sag off of him, and now you're still thinking about the five you're going to play, which on top of that, you can leave off of him too. So now you have a potential five in a playoff matchup of LeBron, Luka, Finney Smith, Vando,
Reeves,
and Reeves. And then you,
40.
you still need a big out there. So the Lakers are definitely going to be into the buyout market. I do think the Lakers fans are upset because they thought Mark Will was going to give them some amazing Pau Gasol like vibes. But in reality, I feel like you really dodged the bullet here. This guy showed you he cannot stay healthy. As for Charlotte, I know they're sick. I
Yeah.
know Charlotte is sick
Yeah.
because now you've created this weird energy. Same thing with Phoenix over there with Kevin Durant. Now there's this weird energy where yo, you tried to trade me, and now I'm like, why would you try to trade me if I've been happy? I've never made any indication that I want to leave. Excuse me. With Charlotte, I'm 23 years old. I know I've been injured, but I've shown you I can hoop. You tried to trade me. The trade gets banked. Now I'm sitting there. I'm stuck here in a place. I don't feel like I want to be here no more. You don't even want me here. So now it's this weird vibe here. And on top of that, for Charlotte, you cannot rely on your starting five to stay healthy. I thought when they traded Mark Wills, it gave me the vibe that they're going to take Kadeem from Duke. Like they're going to go with another big that can kind of, or they'll take another big late. I thought that was the pivot going. They're going to take Malak from Duke, 7-3. You can restart. He has the same raw tools as Mark Williams. So I think that would have been the energy I was getting. But now you're sitting here for both teams. The Lakers are stuck in really looking into the buyout market, trying to get a front court because they're lacking in that department.
If I were the Hornets, looking at Mark Will, who in college only missed one game, coming to the NBA, and within his first 3 seasons misses 61% of his games, has back and foot injuries at 7'1", which the team does not fully divulge the exact information. And I'm able to move him basically 5 months before I have to give him a contract extension. I get a first round pick, a swap, and a quality rookie in Don Connect who fits very well with my core. The trade goes through and he fails his physical. I would be sick because I know that either we let him walk and we lose out on all that compensation, or we pay him a contract to give him a market value starting center salary of 20 million a year, maybe, and he will likely miss over half of his games. This is Zion Williamson level durability questions, arguably, because he hasn't missed his entire rookie season like Zion, but he played 19 games a year ago, 23 this year, around 43 as a rookie. So you look at that, and the Hornets immediately said, no, Los Angeles, you want Mark Willie, fits him perfectly. They were the ones who called them. I think this Hornets front office, which did not draft Mark Williams, should have been a lot more aware of that ahead of time. They should have made that call days before. So that way, when that physical was failed, they could have still maybe adjusted the trade. Maybe we'll take back the swap. You don't have to give us that LA, and maybe we'll give him a couple second round picks, something to sweeten it. So the Lakers could have adjusted the trade because that happened with the Kyrie Irving deal when Isaiah Thomas had a couple red flags in his physical. They adjusted it because it was the summer. You couldn't do that when the trade deadline passed. So for the Hornets, this is a total bummer because they had a monster good trade deadline. I thought they did a great job capitalizing on the Lakers' need for a center. Whereas for the Los Angeles side, I think they got away very fortunate in this situation because they're able to realize, hey, look, even if the theory sounds perfect, that doesn't always mean the reality is going to match up. When the Mavericks acquired Christian Wood all those years ago, people thought he'd be a match made in heaven. He would average 23 and 10 the way he did for 17 games with James Harden. It never materialized. A lot of the time, there's all these other variables. In this case, the Lakers are going to pay him to probably miss a lot of games. And I would rather have Connect in the draft compensation because if that deal went through, they wouldn't have a first round pick for 6 years that they can move. So for the Lakers, I think it sucks now. You're not going to have a center this postseason. I don't think Jackson Hayes is a good player, but fortunately, you give yourself the flexibility to find a deal in the summer, and ideally, that's a more durable player because I'll be honest, even with these injury issues, we're still not confident Mark Williams can be a good defender because he's missed so much time. And it's actually kind of similar to James Wiseman if I were to kind of compare it to a player one-on-one. All things considered, I think the Lakers should just be grateful they got Luka. And also his last night, 45, 7, and 7. That's exciting enough that you can you can look past this and still be excited for a playoff series.
I think both of you guys nailed it in many aspects. I'll just add a little bit to both of your points. The timing of the Luka Doncic trade is all of this. That is the only thing that led to this happening. I think in an ideal world, let's say they got Luka Doncic a week earlier. If you're the Los Angeles Lakers, now you have time to look for a center because they weren't thinking about looking for a center. And on the other side, Charlotte wasn't even thinking about dealing Mark Williams. It doesn't sound like. Mm-hmm. It sounds like the Lakers, because they got Luka, were like, hey, Charlotte, hey, so we'll give you our first round picks. We'll give you Dalton Knecht, who you probably should have taken at 6 anyway. And Charlotte's like, oh, great. Yeah, we'll take it. They go and they trade. They make that trade. They think they're fleecing the Lakers. Mm-hmm. And it doesn't go through. And now the Hornets are going to go in a situation. I'm a really big Mark Williams fan when healthy, but now you're going to go with him disgruntled. I'm sure, like, if I was a Hornet, I'll be disgruntled by existence. But now I'm especially disgruntled because the Hornets try to trade me and it doesn't go through. So now it's just like this weird energy in Charlotte, which I don't really think they were trying to trade Mark Williams because theoretically a player this gifted who has these injury issues, it's really rare to get equal value for a talent like that. But this was one of those rare situations. They got a talent like they got a package that aligned with the talent. So Charlotte, you're like, I'm trading a player who's not going to be healthy 70% of the time, and we're getting a Lakers pick and a swap and Dalton Knecht. Oh my gosh, They're all over it. If you're the Lakers, who cares? Yeah, we try to trade you. We try to get a center, Dalton Knecht. You're a Laker. Who cares? But on the Charlotte side, Mark Williams, you're mad. And because Charlotte wasn't trying to deal him in the first place, or this would have happened earlier, then now you're just coming in with even more just, sour taste in your locker room going into an offseason for what has already been a very disastrous season for the Hornets.
Yeah. And it's ironic because I wanted the Hornets to take Dalton Knecht as high as number 6. They had him for a couple of days, and then it doesn't obviously materialize. So I feel like that part of the trade was very kind of funny too. But one thing that's not funny, though, is that Mark Williams is actually a really talented offensive player. And it sucks that he has these issues because when he's been on the floor, he's been really damn impressive. So I'm hoping that some of these injury issues can kind of be a blimp and he hopefully can stay healthy because, I mean, what he's been doing is limited time this year. It's been super impressive.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. He's a special player. And He has these special hands that he can just catch anything. And that's what's really rare for a big 7'1". That's really rare. So the fact that he can catch everything, I mean, he can, if he's healthy, for a Lakers star, he has like Andrew Bynum type upside. And unfortunately, like Andrew Bynum, he couldn't stay healthy. So, yeah, I think it's unfortunate there. And Riv, you have anything to say before we move on?
No, I don't think Mark Williams is a special player that you guys think.
I don't think he's he's got special gifts. I mean, he has great hands for his size, like great hands.
Yeah,
And
no, I can see that.
It's pretty explosive at 7'1".
He's special in terms
I
of
see that.
talent. Instinctually,
High standing reach in the NBA. Side note, how is the standing reach higher than Wemby's if Wemby's taller and has a higher wingspan?
higher shoulders, long arms.
Okay.
I think his
kind of
standing
like,
reach is like 9'9", something like that.
Yeah.
He's got really high set shoulders and obviously that wingspan. It's kind of like how people wonder how Peyton Watson has the same standing reach as Jaden McDaniels, who's like 4 inches taller, because Jaden kind of has like the long neck and shoulders that go low, and then Peyton Watson has the arms up, so he can just kind of.
Gotcha.
Peyton's also better.
Ha 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 ha. So
Yeah,
funny.
side note, before the show, James goes, shooting isn't Jaden McDaniels' thing.
He lost me.
That's not what he
He
does
lost.
well. That's what he does 85% of the time with his.
He lost.
He's a great mid-range shooter. He's
can't
not a great
shoot. What are you
three-point
doing?
shooter. That's
John
why he's been breaking out. He's been playing power forward lately.
breaking out.
Mr.
John
33% from 3-point land. That's well better
John
than average.
hit Wilder and
He's hit
Joel.
like 64% from 2 in his last 20 games.
No. This is insane to me because Wilder and Joel are the same guy when it comes to Minnesota. It's the funniest shit I've ever heard in my life. Joel told me the other day. I was like, yo, like we were talking about 8 hours, and I was like, he asked me, he's like, yo, like, and it's not a point guard, and I was like, what does that mean? I don't know what that means. Why are you telling me that? He's like, he doesn't have to be a playmaker, and I was like, that's one of the silliest shits I've ever heard in my life. Just because you're not a point guard, you're the best offensive player in the team. Eventually, you're gonna have to learn how to be a high level playmaker at some point. Yeah, but he's not a point guard. And then here comes Wilder texting us.
That's not the same. That's
He's not
the
a
same.
his job
What is
isn't
he
to
at
shoot. What is he out there to do?
And he's not that. He's Isaac Okoro. And
Have you guys
Isaac's
watched?
solid
That's
reserve.
dumb. That's stupid.
Isaac's
Okay?
a solid reserve.
He
Anthony
gets paid
Edwards,
15 more than Isaac Okoro too, by the way. But he's not. His job isn't to
and
shoot.
he's like 3 times the on-ball player. But here's the thing:
9 points a game.
Jaden's averaging like 18 his last like 10. So I don't know what you're
About
talking
for the season. How much is it for the season?
He's at 11.5 now. He had like
Jesus
an awful
Christ.
He's
first.
round to half. Wow. Listen, when they traded Karl Anthony Towns, it was a vote of confidence that Jaden would improve offensively, and he has not done that.
And
Because
yes.
he's been misused his whole career. He's
Oh,
been
God.
used as a stand in the corner 3-point guy when he's a big. He's not a small forward. I told you guys that a month ago.
He's
The
not a
moment they
big.
the moment they switch him into that power forward type role, and it's like, okay, you're using him as an off-ball attacker who can also get pick and roll and hit pull-ups and be a tertiary decision maker, he's valuable. Portland's been the number one defense in the last 12 games. Jaden dropped 30 on their head. And what do? They just let him run plays, high pick and roll, make some reads, pull up, get to the rim. That's his game. He's never been a good spot-up shooter. I wish he was. It's a big problem he isn't. But when he isn't, and you keep asking him to be it, you're not going to maximize him. He's a great player within 18 feet. He's really figured it out as a rebounder since kind of changing that role. Jaden McDaniels in this type of scheme, not playing next to Randall and Gobert is a different player because they allow him with open space to create with the ball in his hands and off-ball cuts. And that's who he is. He's not a shooter.
Okay, I listen, man. Listen, if the season was about 10 games, you got me. You got me.
And he's been good the last 2 months.
Agreed to be all NBA first team for about.
No, stop saying that, Wilder. Stop saying that. Stop
He's been
saying
good the last 2
2 months.
months.
Stop
And
saying that because I
because
showed you his game
the
log from
common
December.
denominator-
Don't
the
say
common
that.
denominator is that they changed the way they use him. It's not Mr. Spot-Up Shooter anymore. That was stupid. It's get Jaden McDaniels out in transition. Get him out as a tertiary, secondary ball handler. Let him play with his 18 feet.
He's been
So
consistent.
what's his ceiling?
33.7% from 3 last 2 years.
What's his
He's not.
ceiling with this role, Wilder? With this new profound role that you've been begging and pleading for this
Yeah.
$27 million man to do, which we've all been waiting for this leap that apparently Minnesota fans keep thinking is going to happen. Fine, I will play in your world for a second. In your world, in your scenario, Wilder, this is the role he's going to play for the rest of the year and going into next year. Let's say hypothetically Randall's gone this offseason. Jaden's gonna play this role next year. What's his ceiling? What throw me a ceiling.
I think Jaden McDaniels in this type of role could be a top 45, 50 player.
Okay. John, you heard him.
Yep.
Top 40. And who's a top 45, 50 player? Like, throw me a name. Like OG Anunoby, right?
Yeah, kind of OG, maybe like
Laurie Markkinen.
Laurie, I would say in his best years is more top 30-ish.
Okay.
Yeah, I would say like OG is a fair range. I would say, Bridges, I would say Aaron Gordon, kind of high end. You know what I mean? Like
Okay.
I think Jaden is that. I think Jaden is more comfortable in the Aaron Gordon role than he is in the spot up 3-point role. That was always dumb to me. But it's also really hard when you have so many moving pieces and 2 lumber bigs or 2 non-floor spacing 4s and 5s to ask Jaden to do anything else. So I kind of get that. But
I'll be so honest. Top 50 is so rich.
hey,
That's a reach.
Brandon
Hey,
Ingram,
I told you
Jalen
guys
Warren.
Steph wasn't top 10 anymore, and I was right on that. And now we're going to move part 2. Jaden top 50 soon. Let's
My
go.
40 to 50 is a list of players that Jaden McDaniels is not in their tier. Brandon Ingram, Jalen Williams, Jalen Johnson, Jimmy, Kawhi. These are all like red flags.
45 to 50? They're higher.
Jimmy and Kawhi here.
Brandon Ingram's not higher.
Yeah,
Ingram is lower.
Kawhi can be moved higher because of injuries. I lumped together Jimmy, Kawhi, Zion, and Porzingis. I'm like, all 4 of these guys are higher when healthy, but they're not healthy, so I'm going to drop them. Can't have Kawhi in my top 20 with how much he's missed. Laurie Markkinen, Jared Allen, Derek White, Tyrese, Bane, Randall, OG. I look at the T-Wolves and
Julius
Jaden
Randle.
is maybe their 4th best creator. I don't know. I'm not really seeing it. I understand that defensively, he's an all-league defender. Beyond that, I think he's a really flawed offensive player. So
I think Jaden's main flaw is the fact that he's not a good shooter from 3. And that's unfortunate.
Yeah.
But he's really, really gifted within 18 feet. I've said that for 5 years. He's really gifted in that range.
Zach LaVine's another one on that top 50. I don't think he's there. Trey Murphy.
I'm not saying Jaden is there
I haven't
right
updated
now.
this list because Trey Murphy is right there.
I'm not saying he's there right now.
Wait, so you're saying Jaden McDaniels at his best is better than Brandon Ingram?
I think Jaden in his prime can be more impactful than Brandon Ingram, yes.
I see how you worded that.
Right,
I like how you worded that.
I like how you worded that too.
Because you tried to be. I see you tried to.
That was clever.
Wilder. I know your tricks. I know your tricks, buddy. I know your tricks, brother. Listen,
I mean, he's
Jaden.
definitely in the Lou Dort tier, like 80.
He's be better than Lou Dort. Jeez.
Hey, show some damn respect to Lou
I don't know
Dort,
about
man.
that. I this year I disagree with that firmly. Lou Dort's
Lou Dort's is only like 26 too.
Yeah. Lou Dort's shooting 42% from 3 this year. Don't compare them right now.
That shit is fake.
But like I said, Jaden McDaniels.
Fake. Last year, he made
Jaden
39.
McDaniels grabbing 8 boards a night and playing within 18 feet is a different player, man. I'm telling you.
Okay.
Because McDaniels, like when you use him in stand in the corner and then guard the point guard from half court, and then he's getting you 3 rebounds and he's not spacing. That's not a very good player. It's not.
Listen, this is way too much airtime for an average player. Can we move on?
Oh, by the way, Naz Reid is like the best shooting big in the league now.
He's right there.
Watch some of the shots he was nailing yesterday. He just like every ISO step back 3, step back 3, step back 3.
He's a better shooting big than Cat.
This year he is, yeah. It's not even a debate. He's making more on better efficiency, and he's playing 10 minutes less. And he's hitting tougher shots. I mean, step backs. Naz is a money step back 3.
Okay. He's hitting tougher. Okay.
I'm a January merchant, too. He's 62. He's made 62 threes on 53% since the start of January.
Okay.
So thank you for giving me my Timberwolves rant, guys. Now, I think we've kind of talked about most of the trade stuff. Do you guys want to touch on the Luka thing again or not really? Because we
would like to highlight it. I'd like to start off by saying this. I've collected my thoughts. This is, first off, when Shams has to tweet, I was not hacked, that's how you know you lost the trade. On the other side of things, this is the first time I've ever seen GM thank the opposing GM for accepting a trade. because they're business partners, and obviously, so thank Rob Pelinka for doing business. He couldn't have done anyone else. Uh, with that in mind, we talked about on the last show, Riv, basically, or like there's something sketchy here. I think the sketchy thing is that Rob Pelinka and Nico Harrison had a backhand agreement, and that's how this partially got done, and also because Nico Harrison probably didn't have a great relationship with Luka, if I had to imagine. I mean, his predecessor, the VP of some sort of, he was in the front office before him, Bob Voulgaris, before Nico Harrison came in, had a very tumultuous relationship, and they had a rift with Luka, and that led to Voulgaris leaving. So, I like to thank Rob Pelinka for making this trade.
First of all, the fact that Nico Harrison was able to get away with this and not get fired tells me all I need to know about the NBA. It's rigged. It's rigged. It's rigged. It's rigged. It's rigged. I agree with y'all. There had to be some, you give me your wife, or we had this little deal or something like in the back, like we like it's like I something happened with them two to where there's like this deal, like all right, we're not going to tell the world about this, but this is also a part of the deal because dude, you just don't make that deal. Mark
Yeah.
Cuban doesn't let that deal happen. Mark
No.
Cuban
He
would
fires
have
them.
fired everybody before he let that deal happen. And if you're a front office and and Nico Harrison comes up to you like, hey, I feel like they fire him too. So I feel like this is sketchy. Like I don't care if Luka was 500 pounds, brother. This brother averages 35 on a fat night. Like
More
this
people
dude
see
is a is a
270 if that's what they're
he's
doing.
a beast. Why would you give up somebody who can go bar for bar with anybody in the league? That doesn't make sense to me. Um, Nico Harrison, even in his presser. Oh, me and Jason Kidd might not be here in 3 years.
Presser
Huh?
should never
Yeah,
happen.
yeah. The
That was
presser was
bad. Yeah.
the
Never happened.
presser was awful. You saw Jason Kidd's body language.
He
You
was
saw
uncomfortable.
the way Jason Kidd was reacting. How he wasn't even giving anybody any eye contact. He was just looking like we really fucked up. Like I can't believe this happened. You saw Nico Harrison kind of interject like, "Well, I make the decision. This is my decision." But Jason Kidd, he listens. But at the end of the day, I make the decision. Kind of making it seem like a dictatorship. Then you see Nico Harrison glazing the shit out of AD. Oh, this
I mean,
guy's phenomenal.
to be
This
fair,
guy's a stud. Like,
Riv,
yeah, cool. All that
Riv,
sounds great. It's Luca. Like, we don't care. We legitimately don't care. Then on top of that, Nico's talking about AD fits this defensive identity. Your best runs have been with Luca when they were top defenses, but Luca was leading the charge on offense with Jalen Brunson and Kyrie Irving. So it really doesn't matter who his partner is. When they make their runs, Luca can do it. You just have to give him a defense, which I think if this year, if Dallas was healthy, they could have made another run. This team was really good. This team was deeper than last year. I feel like this team just been banged up this year with a ton of injuries. That's why they're at the bottom. And granted, I'm sorry I have to say this, but holy moly, guess who got hurt in their first debut game with the Dallas Mavericks? Take a swing, ding, 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 Anthony Davis. So like it's like it's unfortunate, but like Nico, man, get your head out of your ass. I mean, dude, what do you like? It's this trade is it's so shocking and it's so embarrassing and it's probably the stupidest deal in NBA history, probably the worst trade in NBA history. And if Nico Harrison doesn't win like 2 or 3 titles, he's gonna go down in NBA history as probably making the worst move ever. Like that's gonna be your legacy. Like your legacy going down from 10 years to 15, because Luca is gonna make a legacy for himself. And it's always gonna come back to, well, hey, how did Luca end up in Dallas on the Lakers? People can say, oh, it was a trade. What was the trade? People are going to say, oh, Anthony Davis in the first round. Who was the idiot that made that trade? And that's when the big name Nico Harrison is going to pop up. And like, honestly, like days later, I'm still shocked. Days later, I'm still in disbelief at how you could, out of every fucking organization, you give the Lakers Luca. Like, it couldn't be anybody else. You had to give them Luca. And when a star goes to the Lakers, it's guaranteed a title. Magic, James Worthy, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, to Shaq, to then Kobe, Pau Gasol, to then LeBron, AD. Every
Dwight Howard.
single, like Dwight Howard. Wait, what? Oh yeah, facts. He wasn't a star, but sure, we can add him too.
He looked like it.
Every damn near every decade except the '90s. Oh no, actually they won it. They went to the finals. No, I don't think they won in the '90s, but they were really competitive. Every decade, damn near, they've won a championship. In our era, 2000s, 2010s, 2020s, we as 25 of 26 and under guys have seen the Lakers win in every single decade. And now you give them Luca. It's just Nico Harrison and Rob Pelinka. Rob Pelinka is crazy, not crazy, but Rob Pelinka is a sly guy for making this deal under the books. For them being so secretive, I feel like that's nuts too. And them
Yeah,
being business partners also at the same time kind of gives it that sneaky vibe.
you have to
But
be. No, it's not
Rob
actually like
Pelinka, listen, Rob Pelinka for keeping it low. Shout out to you because if you didn't keep it low, teams were gonna be calling like, hey, what about this, and this. Nico Harrison, you're just a fool, bro. Like you don't deserve a job.
right. It's just the fact after reflecting on the trade, you could have extended Luca and increased his trade value before. And there's so many flawed reports like Luca having discomfort when he bought a $15 million home in Dallas Fort Worth. He lost $100 million because of this move. He goes from a team that is well orchestrated around him in the front court to the wings. Perfect roster construction up until that point by Nico Harris the last year and a half. Then I go to a team where it's not really built around you. You get to play with LeBron, which is an awesome pairing as a basketball IQ mismatch attacking duo. Yes, Jackson Hayes is your center. You just had Daniel Gafford and Derek Lively averaging 20, 14, and 3.5 blocks. You had it a lot better in Dallas. But I think the biggest gripe that I have with this move is just the fact that, like you highlighted, Riv, so well that this is Nico Harrison's legacy as the guy that traded Luka Doncic in the smack dab middle of his prime. You were the one that ruined the roster in the 2023 season because you let Jalen Brunson walk and the team missed the playoffs despite having the league's sixth best offense. In the last 2 years where the Mavericks built a good, solid, cohesive core around Luka, he took them to the conference finals in 2022. They lost to the Warriors, who went to the NBA Finals and won. And then they went to the finals last year and lost to a dominant Celtics team. So the last two times you've built a decent team around Luka, you're a top 3 team in the NBA. You keep knocking on the door, at some point you're gonna win a championship. I think people have dismissed Anthony Davis and Max Christie. Max Christie is coming to Dallas. They beat the Celtics with him defending Tatum at a high level. He's averaging 18, 6, and 3 in his first 3 games in the Mavericks. I think those two players have handled this trade as well as you could. AD comes in, unlike the GM, has a fantastic presser. I understand what Luka meant to the city, but I can only control winning basketball games. He comes in, has 24, 13, 5, and 3 in the first half, and makes most of the threes. Looks awesome because AD flipped it a notch. He turned it up a gear. And I feel like when Anthony Davis plays at that level, you can see
Well, he
that
wanted to
ceiling.
leave.
In New Orleans, he can easily be that top 5 player any given night. But it comes back to the fact that when AD ramps up to that level, sometimes his body gives out on him. He's been so healthy the last year. 76 games played last year. Only missed 5 games this year until the trade. But of course, then has a groin injury. It doesn't seem to be too serious, luckily. But I will say, Riv, you are right. One of the most ludicrous, incredulous trades in NBA history. With it in mind, I've warmed up to it quite a bit because Max Christie is a really good young player and a really talented 3-and-D wing that fits in. And AD, for as much shit as we give him, Riv, he's the 8th best player in the world. I understand he's 5 years older. I get it. He's a top 10 player in the world. And
I
when
agree.
you have him healthy, I still think the Mavericks have a chance to win a playoff series or
No,
two. It just comes down to a consistent Kyrie because you have everything else in the front
no,
court around.
Change of
I
heart.
agree. I agree. I think on Dallas side, I'm fine. Like in terms of just their team, like I think it drops your ceiling a ton because you lost a top 3 player in the league. But this team actually fits extremely well around AD's strengths. And let's be honest, AD wanted to leave. Like AD kind of wanted out. He kind of gave the vibe that I kind of don't like. He was making comments on how I want to center, I want to play the 4,
Yeah.
and then a week or two later, boom, he gets moved. Nico Harrison loves AD, so this was a perfect pairing in Nico Harrison's mind. And this roster fits around AD's strength. So
Yeah.
I've never, in terms of the team aspect, I felt like AD fits really well with this Dallas team. I think they'll be extremely competitive. I've even talked about they can maybe, pump out a second round berth, maybe get lucky, make a WCF. It all depending on playoff time. Can you rely on Kyrie being that primary initiator? Can you rely on Kyrie being that primary guy? Can you get PJ Washington series like he did in OKC, which he had a demon in him and he was hitting every 3 known the man. I think this team is really good. It's just why would you make a dumb malpractice move like that? Like trading away a guy in oh, he didn't even get his prime yet for a guy who's 31 years old and he deals with nagging injuries. He may have played 76 games last year, but he dealt with still nagging injuries that he played through. Like this is a guy in AD who, like you mentioned, he can ramp it up. We've seen him at the best of his ability. Then unfortunately the body gives out. That's just the terrible part about it.
I saw a very interesting conspiracy theory. I want to hear what you guys think. So I always feel like trades like this, it's never one person. It's not just Nico. It's not just an individual. I'm sure there's layers between that relationship. I believe Luka could be a lot to handle sometimes. I could buy that. Things like that. But I saw a theory and I just thought it was interesting. My dad was actually a proponent of it. You know where their owner is from?
Las Vegas.
Las Vegas.
Oh
You
yeah,
know, they're trying to open a casino in Texas and it got shut down. So the idea is, okay, how do you disattach the emotional attachment to a fan base to a city? You trade the most beloved athlete in the state unprompted.
Yep.
To burst that momentum into moving that franchise to Vegas and maybe make a lot of money and fulfill other business venture desires as well. It's a theory I saw. I'm not saying I disagree with it or agree with it, but what do you guys think? Do you guys think there's a business side to this trade that goes far beyond the player or the relationship between the player and clearly ownership desires, similar to how the Seattle owner wanted to move to his hometown, Oklahoma City?
Right. I will say that psychologically that makes sense. But from a business side, I'm sorry, Las Vegas' basketball atmosphere sucks outside Summer League. If you watch the NBA Cup, there is no energy. They do not deserve an expansion team. I think Jersey City, New Jersey has better energy when it comes to fan appeal. Now, they're not going to sell out as much, but I'll be so real with you with the NBA Cup and how dim and how depressing and how quiet the stadium has been. Do not give Mexico City. I'm so real. Give Mexico City an expansion team.
bring it to Seattle.
Anywhere. Oh, Seattle's one, obviously. That's locked in. I would rather see a place like Mexico City. It's a massive market with a diehard fan base so far away from it's like 4 hours from San Antonio, but with how fast travel has become, maybe that's possible. I'm so real with you. Las Vegas does not deserve an NBA team. So trading Luka would make it even more challenging to sell out tickets. That's a 23-win team perennially. And I think it makes a lot of sense psychologically. But if that were to be really the case, I'm sorry, if you're an expansion team, not an expansion, if you're relocating, you're gonna rather have Luka to sell tickets because I'm gonna be really. What do you guys think? Does Las Vegas deserve an expansion?
No, John, we've had the pleasure of going to Vegas for summer league. But we went. We went at a time when Wemby was the guy. You had Amon, Scoot, like that was the matchups. Brandon Miller, like I feel like they had the stars to make that building rocking, and it was rocking for the first couple of days. Like you had Amon versus Scoot, a matchup. You had Victor out there. It was a crazy atmosphere. The line was stretched. The line was moving too. So I'm not going to sit here and act like we were standing out there in the soaking heat for 20 minutes. But brother, that line was around the building like 3 times. The line was ridiculous. I've never, and it wasn't just for Wemby. That's the great. Like it was Wemby was there, but it wasn't just for like the star power of Amon.
It was Wemby versus B Miller.
Yeah, the star power of Victor, B Miller, Amon, Scoot. Like those four really propelled summer league that year. But like John mentioned, I think we have a lot of places we can go to before we hit Las Vegas. Like I get the casino concept. From a business aspect, Wilder's right. It makes sense. But from just a basketball fan base, if it's not Seattle, it's nowhere. Like
Seattle's locked in.
Yeah, like Seattle's the only place I feel like that gives that we need a team vibe. Vegas doesn't. Vegas gives business. It gives casino. It's just not a basketball city. Like it's dry. It's dead there. It's not the same. For me. That's a UFC boxing vibe.
Yeah.
That's what it is for me.
I don't mean to cut you off. I think it's perfect for summer league. It's an amazing destination, and it should stay that way. They should not. I think that would partially affect the appeal and the value of people traveling because to me, like you highlight like the UFC, it's meant to be a special occasion for special events for people to travel to. But there's not enough like diehard basketball fans. I think we see this with the Raiders too, to where this is where there's meant to be an expansion team. I think a place like Pittsburgh, even smaller market, much smaller, not as glitzy and glamorous, but diehard fan base. Now that would make it tough for me. I root for the Cavs. I'm a Steelers fan. Like, how would that add up? Because Pittsburgh hasn't had an NBA team since the Pipers in 1967 with Connie Hawk. It's been a long time, but I think even Pittsburgh's another place. You have to add 2 teams. I don't know. I'd like to see a team in Pittsburgh, Loki.
You guys know what also doesn't make sense, by the way, from a business perspective? Why are the Mavericks literally refunding season tickets right now?
Yeah.
Literally refunding. That's fishy to me. That's fishy to me.
Like,
you don't do that unless you just have no business motivation, unless it's a way bigger motivation that goes far beyond just the pure season aspect of it. So, yeah, I think it's going to be a very interesting thing in Dallas. And to the Luka trade, we talked about it last week, you and I. I think there's so many layers to it, and I think that the motive of the trade will never figure out. And when Riv gets back, I think gets the technology figured out, I think it's a good way to close the show by discussing which players are touchable and untouchable, and Riv is back. So there it is. So we're going to move forward and just, okay, guys, who are players in the NBA? Riv, you can start out with your list. Who are players in the NBA who are legitimately, unequivocally untouchable?
Okay. This question, like Luka getting traded, shattered all dimensions of our ideals of untouchable. For me, an untouchable player, in my opinion, I think it goes deeper than the actual talent. I think it goes talent also is a part of it, but also what you mean to a franchise, what you mean to the fan base, and what you have done for the fan base. I think, you have to start off with the homegrown guys. So I think the Joker, Steph, Giannis are untouchable. I think the Joker is untouchable because he's the best player in the world. There's no disputing that at the moment. Plus, what he means for that Denver city, what the ceiling he brings. Same thing for Giannis in the sense of he's one of the 3 best players in the world. If anything, those are 2 guys that, unless they trade for each other, which I don't even think the franchises would do that because they feel like they have the better guy, those guys would have to axe out. Steph is a different case because he's not on the same level as those 2 guys anymore, but what he has done is greater than what anybody has done for a franchise in the sense of he is the Warriors. He is Golden State. He epitomizes what they have done. He's the one who created the multi-billion-dollar franchise that they are right now. 4 championships, unanimous MVP, the baby face. He epitomizes what Golden State is. So he is untouchable in the sense where they would never trade him. I don't think no other franchise would even offer up their star to get him because I just don't think, one, I think their star is probably better, the top guys, and 2, I don't think they would think Golden State would say yeah. I think SGA is untouchable right now with the way he's playing. He's playing at an MVP level. He's essentially ascended into one of the top 5 players in the world. I think Luka for the Lakers is untouchable. I think right now, even if he did get traded, I get that. I still think the Lakers wouldn't even. I don't think the Lakers are dumb like Nico Harrison. I think the Lakers understand that they have a generational guy. I think Wemby is also untouchable. I think 2 guys who are teetering on that line for me would be Jason Tatum and Anthony Edwards. I think those are guys that I would deem you can swing untouchable. Yeah, you can swing non-untouchable if you're like trading the Joker for those, but those are unrealistic situations. So I think those 2 guys also teeter along the untouchables in the sense of they're the guys for their franchise. Their franchise love and adore them, and unless they axe out, they're going to be there for their life.
Right. I will say, and I made a tweet about this, there's only 2 untouchable players, Nikola Jokic and Victor Wembanyama. Now, thinking about it a little bit more, I think I left out Giannis and I left out Shea. And the reason why I did that is because Luka just got traded. I was like, if Luka just got traded, that means the league doesn't desire him as untouchable. But then I give myself 28 to 48 hours, give myself a few business days, started rethinking about it. I think Luka's untouchable. I know one team doesn't, but that to me is indifferent. So if I were to revise my list, I think I needed some time to reflect. There's 5 untouchable players in the NBA. You're not going to trade these guys for anybody. Nikola Jokic, very straightforward. It's the best player in the world. This is one of the most loyal stars. He's beloved. He's an amazing figure, and he's a culture setter. I think he's a lot like Tim Duncan. The other player who's similar to him, is Giannis Antetokounmpo, 30 years old. The reason why I also left him off is because, one, he's flirted with leaving Milwaukee so many times that I think he's kind of willing to to leave. And I think that makes him a little bit less valuable. He's not going to want to stay there forever. But Giannis, to me, is the second best player in the world. Who does on both ends of the floor is remarkable. Third, I'm going to have Wemby because the ceiling is to be just as good as those two players. And he is 21 years old. His work ethic, his attention to detail, his commitment to excellence, I think all of that gives him the opportunity to be the best player in the world in a few years. Fourth, I'm going to go with Luka. I know people don't like the fact that maybe he's, I don't know, whatever bullshit they make up, he's untouchable. And then last, I'm going to go with Shea because the year he's having. And leaving him off to me was the one egregious one. I'm going to be honest with you guys, because with the year that he has been having, it's one of like the three best guard seasons.
The 3-year run. 3-year run he's having.
I think I made a really bad mistake, and I have to hold myself accountable. That was a dumb take. I think leaving him off the untouchable list was kind of crazy. But in my mind, I was like, would I trade Nikola Jokic for Shea? I'm like, yeah, maybe, but Nikola Jokic is 5 years older.
Yeah, those are unrealistic expectations.
4 years older. So
I think those are good lists. I think the way the Luka trade is spun my brain is what team are these players on and who are their owners. I truly think a trade like Luka isn't a Nico move. I think it's an ownership move. I think you have to look at what situation each franchise player is in. So here are the players who I think are untouchable based on, I don't know, my inference on their franchise. I think Luka on the Lakers is untouchable.
Yep.
I think Denver with their front office, which is known to be prideful, as well as some people could call them cheap. I'll just say they operate like a small market sometimes, and their ownership has a lot of teams, right? I don't think they would ever trade Joker. The Bucks would never trade Giannis.
Unless he axes.
Huh?
Unless he axes, I agree. I don't think the Bucks trade Giannis.
Shea's an interesting one because I would be shocked beyond measure if they ever traded him. But there's also this weird little demon on my other shoulder that says that Thunder team with Sam Presti and that ownership's done crazy things like trading a James Harden after a finals run. And I get it. He's not at Shea's level at the time or anything like that. But I'm not going to confidently say he's untouchable yet. Like, I'm like 99% confident he is. But there's a 1% of me that's like, you never know either. Right? So that one I'm kind of teetering on. And you know what's funny? The Timberwolves ownership tomorrow is going to be very fascinating because we know who owns the team tomorrow. And I'll tell you this, Glenn Taylor, who owns the Timberwolves, I think if he wins it, I don't think Anthony Edwards is untouchable because we've seen his past relationships with franchise superstars and where that has gone, trading Kevin Garnett without asking to be traded, which is honestly a good Luka trade comp. And then Minnesota's owners, Mark Lowry and Alex Rodriguez, I would say would never trade Anthony Edwards. Those guys, they're marketing guys, and they know how marketable Anthony Edwards is. So Anthony Edwards, I think my answer will be based on tomorrow, whether he's untouchable or not. If Mark Lowry and Alex Rodriguez win the ownership battle, I think he's untouchable. Otherwise, not. So, and then Steph Curry, because of legacy on the Warriors, absolutely. So the four players who I think are undoubtedly untouchable, I think it's LeBron, not LeBron, what the heck? Giannis, Jokic, Luka, and Steph. I think those are my four untouchables right now. And there's a couple guys on the fringes. I think Tatum would get traded if the right deal happened because Boston.
I don't think Brad Stevens would trade him, bro.
I think if there was a deal that you just couldn't pass on, they would. But that's like we're talking about very unrealistic scenarios. So like I kind of have that next bin of like the Stephs or the Ants and Tatums, like Riv and the maybes, and Ants kind of teetering based on what happens in the ownership battle tomorrow.
Yeah, I think like the problem with untouchable conversations is people love to say like, oh, well, this guy can't be untouchable because if you trade the guys that are better than him for him, then you would say, yeah. But yeah, why would you trade the guy? Like, we're not all Nico Harrison. Why would I, as a Denver fan or a Denver team, trade the Joker for Tatum? That doesn't make sense. Like, he's untouchable in a sense of where why would I do that? So, like, and untouchable is such a tough card because you mentioned it, Wilder. There's been times where the wildest things happen where we get the shocking news of this guy got moved and we're like, what the fuck? We thought this guy would be untradeable. But you've looked at for Tatum. You looked at what he's done for the franchise. You look at how he's grown up in front of the franchise. I think he gets not the Steph Curry tag, and it's because Steph, 4 championships, 15 plus years, all that. But he's getting to that in a sense of where he's building a legacy in Boston, and he is really profound and really, reaching that pinnacle of one of the best Celtics in their history, and really putting his stamp on the fact that he's. I think Jaylen Brown's the guy that would probably be moved. I think Jason Tatum is a guy that's sticking for a long time.
Yeah.
And then an SGA point, the James Harden thing makes sense. I think that more steers in the J Dub way, in the Shet way. I think
I
SGA
agree.
is the Kevin Durant of this trio. I think he's the guy where he has to axe out, or it has to be a
Mhm.
free agency thing. But I think SGA, his personality, his comfortability in OKC, the fact that he was traded from the Clippers and he's kind of grown up among the OKC guys, I think he's there to stay.
Yeah.
I agree with the points you made. I'm just saying there's still that 1% little
Yep,
demon.
always.
A couple of those, like the Tatums, the Ants, the Shays. There's a little demon on my shoulder that's like, what if this scenario transpires? You know what I mean? So that's where I'm at with it.
All right, so real quick, we didn't get to cover the Cavaliers trade, but I want to do a roundtable rapid fire NBA trade deadline, biggest winner and biggest loser for each of us. I'm going to start off. My biggest winner is going to be the Cavaliers. Or, okay, I know we're all going to say it's the Lakers' biggest winner. My favorite winner is going to
Pick
be the
them off.
Cleveland Cavaliers. My winner is going to be the Cleveland Cavaliers getting DeAndre Hunter. This is the type of move which, to me, fits so well into their new identity this season because they're playing with one big on the floor a lot more often, and he's the type of player that can guard up onto fours, but at the same time, as a quality defender, it hurts losing Levert, but he's a better shooter. This year, he's having a career season, and to get a wing player who's on he's not an expiring contract in a career year, averaging 19 points a game on 61% true shooting, that fits in so well as arguably the best fifth starter in basketball alongside a Derek White for 0 first round picks, to me is a home run trade. My biggest loser is gonna have to be a team like the Bucks trading Chris Middleton after how well he played last year against the Pacers, a franchise legend. You can't tell Giannis' story without Chris. To me, it was a bummer moving him with a first round pick and then also AJ Johnson. I think the collection of those pieces, because they should never have took AJ Johnson in the first place of their timeline, was poor roster construction and a management of assets. But I do believe Kyle Kuzma will improve and fit a lot better in Milwaukee. It's just the fact, man, Chris Middleton's one of my favorite players of all time. And seeing him in a Wizard jersey, I'm not going to like it all. I would have rather them
And
stuck
for
down. Let him get hurt. I don't care. If he plays 7 games in the series, he gives you a much better chance to win.
For me, my biggest winner is going to be the San Antonio Spurs. I'm going to try to give different answers than what I did on the show. Not only for getting Fox for essentially nothing, but managing to keep their young core intact. They kept Castle, they kept Sohan. Of course, they kept Wemby. You wasn't getting that for Fox. But being able to pair Wemby with a star player in year 2, somebody that fits the timeline, somebody that is not going to hurt the cap too much, along with keeping your young players, keeping your main lottery draft picks in the Atlanta Hawks pick, which Fox made it known. He knows they have that pick, and that pick is going to be pretty high. And of course, keeping your San Antonio Spurs pick, which if you don't make the playoffs, you'll have another lottery talent coming in, or maybe you can use those draft picks this year in a deal to get another star. But that's another conversation for another day. So the winner for me is the Spurs. And my loser, I said Atlanta Hawks on pick a side. So for this one, I'm gonna say the Memphis Grizzlies, just because of John. You know me and you, biggest Memphis Grizzlies fan. There's something going on with 12. It could be nagging injuries. It could be the differences in the offensive scheme. It could just be him struggling. But I find it hard to believe that a man that's averaged 25 plus for the last 3 or 4 years can just fall off a cliff. I think he's just having a down year. And with him having a down year, you needed to be aggressive at the deadline. You're sitting at top 3 in the West. You have Jaren Jackson playing the best ball of his career. You have Vince Williams, Gigi Jackson, young players that are coming back to form. You needed to make a move to bring some veteran presence on this team, to bring some solid, solidified starters on this team. And you chose to send out a first round pick and Marcus Smart. You didn't bring anything in. I feel like you could have capitalized at this deadline to really compete in the West, but now you sit pat with about 12 good players, and you don't have a real foundation into what your rotation is come playoff time.
Okay, so I'm going to be the less hot takey person. I'm going to be pretty lame. So my winner of the trade deadline is the Los Angeles Lakers. You got a generational player at 25 years old. You had Kobe, or we could go way back. You had Wilt. You had Magic, Kareem, Shaq, Kobe, LeBron, now Luka Doncic. It's going to be a very interesting next decade in Los Angeles. And my loser is the Phoenix Suns. You talk about Kevin Durant. You talk about trading him behind his back. There's already tension in that Suns locker room. And now because you didn't trade him, but he's highly aware of the trade conversations, you're going to go back into that locker room with no financial flexibility, no cap room flexibility, no draft picks, no assets in totality. And on top of that, the players that you actually gave up everything for are not meshing either. And you can't trade Bradley Beal. And this summer, we're probably talking about KD trades again. And the Suns likely lose leverage in KD talks now.
Yeah. And who also folded? Real quick, the Magic. Anthony Simons, Kobe White, no. Not a single player on this team is making 35% of their threes right now. The one player who did tore his ACL is out for the season. And you know what they did at the deadline? They sat on their hands and make 0 moves after losing 8 of their last 10 games. Orlando has Paolo Banchero struggling coming off torn oblique. They have Franz Wagner shooting 30% flat from 3 coming off torn oblique. They have no one in their starting lineup making over 32, 33% of their threes. And they said, yeah, let's just stick this out going to the playoffs. This team is fine. We have a dire need for shot creation on the perimeter and a sore lack of playmaking, a sore lack of shooting. And that combination of the two things makes it one of the worst offenses I've ever seen, despite having a first overall pick who's transcendent when he's actually kind of supported properly in Franz. So I've lost a lot of confidence this last week in Orlando's front office.
We're very negative here on the show at the end of it. So, yeah, there's a lot of crazy things that happened this deadline. Only 5 teams didn't make a trade, which I think is pretty crazy. And you guys mentioned, the only deal Memphis made was the Marcus Smart deal, getting him out of town. Yeah. So at least on the bright side,
I would have kept him.
More young players can play. So that's cool, I guess. They also shipped out a first-round pick to get him off the team, which is a big L.
They need the perimeter defense. They don't have another perimeter stopper with that low center of gravity. Jalen Wells is not as versatile an on-ball defender as Marcus Smart. So I think that was a bad move.
I totally agree. Well, I believe that is going to do it for today's show, episode 14 of Objectively Biased. We're going to move our top 10 young players to build around 2.0 to probably next week or maybe a different week. So stay tuned for that. But thank you, everybody, so much for listening to this episode. Before we officially shut this episode down, Riv, John, you want to make any final statements?
Here we go. We got Cavs OKC finals. We got OKC Memphis WCF. Walk with me, John. In the ECF, Cavs are going to fuck the Boston Celtics. We're going to have our grand old SGA versus Donovan Mitchell, Darius Garland, Evan Mobley vibe. Stephon Castle, rookie of the year when he starts. 12, please, 12. And if you don't know who 12 is John Morant, one of my favorite players. Wake up, please, for the love of God, bro. I've been fighting for you. I need you to wake up.
Yeah, Stephon Castle, rookie of the year, is looking more and more possible. It's got to get that efficiency up. And my finals prediction has been Nuggets and Cavs. That was before the Hunter trade, though.
And I just want to say, Jaden McDaniels, I love you. So we'll end the show on that note. This is episode 14 of Objectively Biased. Thank you, everybody, for listening, and we'll see you next week.